Hello everybody, welcome to Let's Make Art. We do a watercolor project every single week. It's a different one, so we're not doing the same thing every week. It's pretty fun. This week we're doing this Halloween cat. Spooky. That was a really great meow. Thank you. There are only 3 steps to this cat. We're gonna do the top ombre part, the bottom ombre, and then the tree. That's it. Brock.
I've got a raised hand over here.
Yes, Brock.
What does ombre mean?
Ombre is, what a great question. It's a value change from dark to light. So we're gonna start dark at the top of the cat, and then it's gonna go lighter as it gets closer to the moon.
And what do you call that strategic smudge over there to the...
That strategic smudge is called a mistake.
Oh.
So I'm just going to pretend that's not there. It's fine. It's not a big deal.
Looks great.
It looks great. It doesn't look great, but it's just a painting. And it happens to me all the time. And I thought about repainting it, and then I was like, you know what? These people need to see that I mess up too, and it's not a big deal. So that is that cat. Okay, we are using only 2 colors today. We have black and berry blue, and we're gonna mix those. And if you're using Dr. P.H. Martin, then the berry blue is similar to an iris blue or a peacock blue. That's what you're gonna wanna use. We have 2 paintbrushes. We have a round 6 and a round 2. Those are our standard. However, if you have a round 10, this project lends itself to a little bit of a larger brush if you have it. So if you have the round 10, bust that out also, because it makes your life easier when you're doing the ombre. You ready to go? Yeah, let's do it. Okay, so I did paint this using a round 6, but I'm just gonna use a round 2 because it's easier. But don't feel like you can't paint this if you have the round 6, because you can, and I did. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start at the top of the head, like on the edge here, and then as it gets closer to my moon, it's gonna get lighter, and that's because the moon itself is glowing. It doesn't glow by itself. It's actually reflecting off the sun, which I recently learned. And that is why there's light around it. So,
science and art.
Science, art together. It's great. Okay. Now, the other thing you want to keep in mind when you're painting with watercolor is when you want to make a color lighter, all you do is add water to it. So what I like to do is I like to do my darkest color first, and then I just spread that color out and only add water to my paintbrush, and then that is going to create that kind of dark to light effect. So I'm grabbing my paintbrush, I'm getting it wet, I'm going to grab some black, and I'm going to grab some blue, and then you can decide how much color you want. Maybe you don't want the black in there at all and you want it like a really bright blue. Go for it. This is your painting. Do whatever you want. So I kind of mix like a navy here a little bit. It's like a dark blue. And I am going to start on the very tip here, just start putting in that color following that edge. I'm being quiet here because I'm focusing on these points here. So I filled in my dark. And now I'm just going to rinse my brush and add water. And just kind of smear out this color. Now, as I get closer to the moon, I want it to get lighter. So I'm going to like kind of dry off my brush, rinse it again so it's just clean water, and then kind of just go where I left off.
That's a fierce looking kitty.
It is a fierce looking kitty. And then when you do these marks, you want to do them in a circular motion around the moon, because the moon itself is circular, so it kind of has that emitting circular light. So when you fill in color, I don't want you to do like hash marks back and forth across. You kind of want to have this kind of feel going on where it's kind of smoothing out. Now, another thing that you can do to get like more of an even color change is while it's still wet, you're going to put some color in, and then you can actually pick up your paper and kind of like move it around if there's enough water on there, and then it will just kind of move across the paper, like down. You can put it to the side, and that's if you're getting really strong brush strokes that you don't want. So you kind of just like move it and that paint will just go across that water and smooth out.
Is there a name for that awesome technique?
There probably is. I don't know it. If you know it, let me know. And then you can just use, I'm just kind of blending a little bit more so I have that nice dark to light.
Ombre is what they call it.
Ombre, exactly. I think the technical term is like value change and hair term is ombre, but it's fine. Okay. And then you can do that as many times as you want. If it's not dark enough for you, then you can go ahead and do another layer on top until it feels right. You know what I mean, Brock.
Yes.
Yes. Also, just a little tip, when you're tracing this, you want your outline for your moon to be as light as possible. If you have a super dark outline here, it's going to show up really well because watercolor is transparent. So try and get that moon line like barely there. Also, it's really hard to draw like a perfect circle. So if your moon is kind of lumpy, don't worry about it. My moon's kind of lumpy, but we're going to have branches over it.
The moon is not a perfect circle.
The moon is not a perfect circle. Brock, I'm so glad you're here.
Yeah.
Moon is not a perfect circle, so it doesn't even matter. You're true with nature. Okay. I just finished step 1. It was pretty great. Now we're moving on to step 2. So step 2 is the same exact thing, except we're gonna do it from the bottom. And I'm just gonna switch my paper around because it's easier for me to work my way top to bottom than bottom up, but you can do whatever your heart desires. Also to keep in mind, when you're doing your dark ombre on your other side, you wanna overlap this line. So this line here is the outline of our tree. We're gonna overlap that when we paint it, and that way, no matter what, there's not gonna be any white spaces in between the sky and the tree. We want it to be like painted right on top. And so if we don't overlap it, then there's a chance that there's gonna be a little white section there. So, overlap. Okay, I'm just gonna use that same mixture, that black and blue. I'm gonna start on the bottom. And actually you can do a similar technique that we did with the barnyard sky, where we actually got it wet and then put the color on top and then let that move down. Let's do it that way. There's many ways that you can do this, so don't feel like you only have to do one. So I'm just going to get this section wet, just using water. And yes, the water is slightly discolored from the rinsing and all that stuff, but I'm not going to stress about that because we're going to paint over it anyway. And then, you got to work quick, you're going to put in the dark color. And then you lift up your paper and get that to slide down. You might have to help it a little bit with a little bit more water. And just work it. Now be careful doing this way because you might just get random drops. But I just picked it up with a paper towel. And then I'm going to smooth it out. And remember, as we get closer to the moon, we want it to be lighter. So it's basically just going to be water with a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of paint in there. And I'm just painting over the branches. I'm not worrying about going around them because we're painting those in black. So they're going to cover up that sky. And I would prefer us not to have any white spaces there. So that is why I'm just going to paint over it. Okay.
Nice lumpy moon. Very accurate.
It is kind of lumpy. I'll just make it a little smaller, reshape it.
It's your painting. You know what? If you want a small moon,
It's your painting. Yeah, if you want a small moon, do a huge moon. Do whatever. It's your painting. Do whatever you want. Okay, I'm going to make my bottom a little bit darker So I'm just going to do another layer right on top. Now the other thing to keep in mind is you are going to want to outline your tree using this dark color. Do not do that because the sky is independent from the tree. So that value change, that color change, that value change, that's happening independent of the tree line. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Great. Okay, and you can see I'm kind of getting a little bit of brush marks here. You can kind of try and lift your paper up, and it's going to just kind of blend those out a little bit to the side. To the other side. Yeah, there we go. Now that's smoothed out. Great. That's it for step 2. We did it.
Wow.
I know. That's like most of the work. Now we're going to wait for it to dry, and then we're going to move on to step 3, which is the tree. If you try and put the tree in right now, it's just that black is just going to bleed everywhere. So you got to make sure that your cat is totally dry before you try and put in your tree branches. Now we wait. And we're back. It's dry. We're ready to go. To test if it's dry, I just touch it. That's probably not the best way, but that's what I do. Because it's just a painting, you guys. It's not a big deal. Okay. Now, when I do my trees, I'm going to start on the bottom, work my way up. Now, here's the thing to remember about trees and tree branches, which is the thicker part is always going to be on the bottom of the tree. So the trunk is going to be thicker, and then it thins up as it grows. And then the individual branches are thicker where they meet the branch, and then they get thinner as they go out. So when you're doing branches, just kind of keep that in mind. You don't want like the tip of your branch to be thicker and then get thinner as it gets closer to where it meets the tree. That makes sense. What I'm saying.
No, I've seen a tree before.
Yeah, you guys have seen trees. Okay, great. Yeah, no, I've seen a tree before. Okay. So I'm just gonna add a little bit of water to my black to make it smooth. There we go. And then I'm just gonna start filling this in. And I kind of lost my outline. I don't know where it is. So I'm just gonna make it up as I go. Also, you can do whatever you want in this silhouette. Maybe you want a little pumpkin on the floor next to the tree.
Can we add a pumpkin?
No.
You don't want a pumpkin.
I don't want a pumpkin.
Somebody might want one.
Listen, this is my painting. I don't want a pumpkin, but if you want a pumpkin, add it. Or an owl or a bat or whatever your heart desires. Or maybe a cat within the cat.
Catception.
Inception with cats. And just fill this out. Now black is kind of a harder color to paint with watercolor because it's automatically transparent, so it's going to want to lighten up a little bit after you lay it down. One thing that you can do to kind of keep it that midnight black is just do another layer, or you drop in water and then you drop in the black paint within that water, and it's going to stay a nice dark black. Okay, now I'm going to switch to my smaller brush to do the branches because they're going to be really thin.
What size brush is this?
2.
Around 2?
Around 2, good. Because there are different types. A line or 2 would work also since we're doing nice thin lines, and remember, really light pressure, that's how you get thin lines. It's like you're barely going to touch this paintbrush to the paper. Sorry, I lost track of what I was saying. So you see I started out thin and then it got thicker as I went down on the tree branch. And then you're just going to fill this guy in. That's all it is. Just kind of following. You can add more branches if you want. You don't have to follow this one exactly. And remember to allow your branches to crisscross from each other. Like they're going to run into each other and they're going to do all of this crazy stuff. And kind of the more branches you have, the more like tree-like it feels. Sorry, I'm focusing.
Is there any trick to making those brush strokes so fine? Do you keep your arm off the table more? Or?
Yeah, so to get really long, thin lines, I don't plant my wrist. I'm just kind of like planting my elbow and moving across. And then also, sometimes you can have too much paint and water on your paintbrush. So sometimes what I even do is like after I fill it up with black, I kind of just like flatten my brush against my pan. And I get my paintbrush then kind of points out or flattens. And so it has like a sharper point as opposed to me just grabbing water, grabbing a ton of paint, and then that's balled up on my paintbrush. So sometimes you just kind of have to flatten it on your pan to be able to get some nice thin lines. You just keep working your way up. And these branches are supposed to like kind of overlap with the moon a little bit, so don't be afraid of covering that up. We want them to be in front of that moon. And some of these branch lines I kind of lost a little bit. So just kind of eyeball it as you go. Brock, how's it looking? You seem very focused.
It's looking pretty great.
Okay, awesome. Some people have actually already done this one. I've been seeing posts once they got their October box.
This might be a rookie question. Are you mixing your black with water at all, or is it all just straight black?
I'm mixing my black with a little bit of water because sometimes if you use just the paint, and I know that with liquid watercolors you're going to want to use just the paint, but if it's sometimes when you do that it has like a rough texture. It doesn't go on smooth. So I usually just add enough water to where I get a smooth consistency where I can get a nice smooth line, and that's how much water I'm using. That was a great question, Brock.
Thank you.
Brock, I'm glad you're here. And when you're doing these nice thin branches, you might like skip a little space because you're going super light. Don't stress about that. And it's okay if some of these branches are like barely there. Because if you look at a tree, there's just like so many branches and so many things going on that there are some that are like barely there because they're so thin or... That's it. It's finished.
Oh my gosh.
I know. So yeah, this painting only had 3 steps, just 1, 2, 3, doing that ombre on the top, at the bottom, and then when that dries, putting in that tree. If there are some places of this black tree that are reading too gray for you, then you can go ahead and just do another layer of black right on top. That will darken it. And for me, I think I added a little bit too much black, which is why this more has a navy look. If you want this kind of more brighter color, then just have more color in your mixture. When you're laying that first color down, have more blue as opposed to black, and that's where you're gonna get a brighter color. Anyways, thank you so much for painting this. If you paint it, share it. You can put it on Instagram and tag us in it. Let's go make art. You can put it on the Facebook group. We have one Facebook group. It's called Let's Make Art Together. It's super awesome and super supportive, and you can ask any questions you have on there. And I know it's scary putting yourself out there, but just in my experience with this community, people want to see what you create, and they get really happy for you, and it makes them want to do it. And it's like this wonderful cycle effect. So share it and make your own changes to it. Make it your own. Let me see what those look like. And then next week, let me get it. Next week we are doing fall leaves. Yay! Brock, tell me these leaves aren't freaking awesome.
I thought that those were real leaves.
So watch out for that tutorial. Anyways, we're painting this cat next Tuesday, live 7:15 Central Standard Time. Come with questions, come just to hang out. It's a great time. I think that's all I need to say. Yep. Yeah, okay, bye.